Happy Friday, all you spooky nostalgians out there, and welcome to the 90s Rewind Report, where all month long we are talking all things bone chilling from our Halloweens of the 90s decade. I am Michael Reagan, and I am joined by my co host, Nate Lane. Braden will not be joining us today, but how are you, Nate?
I am doing pretty good and a little excited because, I don't know, our topic is a little near and dear to our hearts, isn't it?
It is something that was a big part of our 90s experience, yes. Before we get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about the guest I recorded with last weekend. Her name's Connie Kelly. She has taken her love of the film Hocus Pocus to the next level because she's creating her own life-size Sanderson sisters. She's created a Billy Butcherson, and these are all Halloween decorations she's got in her front yard. She is adding more from the film each Halloween, and she is a Halloween enthusiast through and through, and she has created multiple character decorations from a variety of our favorite spooky films, not just Hocus Pocus, but that's what we had her on mainly to talk about. And I've got some pictures. I'm going to show you some of the photos here. Let's see. I will start off with her Sanderson sisters. Remember, again, all this stuff she has made on her own.
That is so cool.
She made the bubbling stuff coming out of the cauldron. She built the cauldron. She bought their costumes and their wigs, but everything else was her. And then here's Emily Bink's headstone. Look how detailed she got that.
I mean, I love it. It's just so like detailed and just perfect. And if you're in the know, the moment you see it, you're like, I know exactly what that's from.
Just look what she's done. Look at this. This is what she's added this year. That's the cemetery scene she's
Oh,
added in
that's
her yard.
cool.
That is awesome. And then you zoom in a little bit here, and we get Billy Butcherson and his headstone.
I was gonna say you can tell instantly exactly who that is, and it's great.
I thought I had one that actually showed a view from her house that shows her whole front yard, but I didn't upload that one. The reason why though is because we're gonna put all of these up on our TikTok and our Twitter. That way you guys can see all the pictures too. We'll put it on Facebook also. But I just wanted to show you so you could see. But just to be transparent about the joys of doing our own podcast, last week I had technical issues that delayed us for about an hour. So I left poor Miss Connie waiting. Secondly, I had somehow deleted my outline. Now, Nate knows when we're writing an episode, we spend probably hours every week just writing an outline for the episode. So I was asking my questions and giving my trivia about the film from memory, and it was not my finest hour. And luckily, Miss Connie was well versed on the film and its trivia, so our guest filled in the gaps for me.
Hey, that's all right.
Yeah.
Got to lean on each other in a business like this.
But if that wasn't bad enough, we have one more issue, and it was the worst by far. And that was after we had been recording for about an hour. We were about to say our goodbyes. I realized that the recording had stopped at 26 minutes in.
Oh,
So,
no.
apparently, I had briefly lost internet connection. And when that happens to the host's computer, it pauses the recording. So, I had to explain to Connie what happened, and we basically had to spend another hour re-recording. But luckily, she was very, very sweet and understanding, and she is even willing to come back in December to talk about some of her Christmas decorations that she does. But it was kind of stressful, yeah.
I can't wait to see what she's got for Christmas because I'm blown away by the Sanderson sisters alone.
She is phenomenally talented. That's all I'll say. But I am also happy this week because you, Nate, you took over the responsibilities of researching and creating the outline for today's topic. So I did not have to really do anything this week. So Nate, I'm actually going to let you take it from here.
Well, I appreciate that. And I just want to say, God help us all because you're now in the hands of a madman. So it's very near and dear topic because it's slasher movies, especially the resurgence of the slasher genre in the mid 90s. But the build up to it, I think, is probably just one of the most fascinating things because it almost seemed like it was about to fizzle out, except for a certain movie that we'll get to in a little bit. Apparently, there is a lot of controversy about when exactly the slasher genre started. Because I was researching it and I didn't realize just how many people just want to throw in their 2 cents about it. My definition personally of a slasher movie is a film where a perpetrator dispatches a number of people in different and hopefully imaginative ways. Machete, knife, shish kebab, weed eater, lawnmower filled with marital that kind of thing. But I don't know. For me personally, I think that just the slasher, the one person dispatching multiple people without anybody catching wise initially, was probably Psycho, like in the like 1960. Oh, it kind of built a little bit of steam, but it was almost like a forbidden fruit in the film industry because you had like certain movies in the 60s that kind of carried it, but it wasn't until like Last House on the Left of Wes Craven and Texas Chainsaw Massacre where you started getting into some realistic, even where the topics were just kind of getting gnarly in a way. I'm trying to think
Yeah,
of like
that
a
make
good way to
that
term it.
makes sense. Yeah, like they're more personable,
Uh,
like it wasn't so far fetched, so it sort of left a more unsettling feeling with the viewer.
yeah, if it wasn't like in your neighborhood, it was right down the road, or maybe just on a stopover on a vacation with like movies. Like I said, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Hills Have Eyes. Were just it threw the common man into scenarios, and then like as it got later into the decade, you had like movies like Halloween, Friday the 13th, whereas particularly teenagers in an adult-free environment getting thrown into the wood chipper, more or less.
Have you noticed there were always parents absent from every single one of those slasher films generally?
No, it's like, and I think that's why we look back at those like, man, that'd be a time to live. No parents around, you get to smoke and have and all that. It's like
Wild parties at your house.
all those things that mean the most to you when you're like between 16 and 19. So there was just like that great time, like pretty much from the late 70s all the way through the 80s when it just blew up. You know, there were more slashers in the 80s than I could count on fingers. My personal favorite, Jason Voorhees. Me and you were both mutually friends of the Michael Myers franchise.
Yeah, that is still my favorite horror franchise to this day. It's lost. It's an origin story. You don't really know anything. Is he human? Is he superhuman? Is he supernatural? Because I know you said you didn't watch Halloween Ends, the final one, but it's very disappointing because you wait this whole time for this big showdown between him and Jamie Lee Curtis, and he's in like 7 minutes of the final film. There's actually a different villain in the film. It's
That's
not
so weird.
Michael Myers mask, but he's not Michael Myers.
I was gonna say, did like Michael Myers break down and they had to treat him like the shark from Jaws? Check again, the Michael Myers is working.
They make it like he's Michael Myers' protege. Like Michael Myers is in on it. And I'm like, Michael Myers is a lone wolf. He does not have a protege.
No. Like they had to turn him into Jigsaw all of a sudden. But no, it's like all those like awesome 80s slasher movies just kind of led up to, the early 90s where it was just kind of fizzling out in a way. Like, it seemed Paramount had shot its wad with the Jason movies. They'd fizzled out, sent him all the way to Manhattan where he kind of got hit with toxic waste and turned into a child and somehow died in the sewer. I don't know. It's that was a weird one. And he had the Freddy movies where Freddy was son of 100 maniacs. He had a bastard child, but did he? I don't know. All the good slasher movies were kind of fizzling out because even like the Halloween movies, as awesome as they were, you had like the whole lineage of niece Danielle Harris. Love Danielle Harris. But now it's like that's all we could really get as far as good slasher was like sequels.
Yeah, they
And
didn't.
like
They weren't coming up with anything new at the time.
no. And like looking at this outline that I drew up, and especially like starting in 1990, the only real good slashers, and I mean, I'm using that term very loosely here, was like Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Child's Play 2, Maniac Cop 2, which I didn't even bother with that one.
Mm-mm.
Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, which I wish I had that time back in my life.
I did not watch that one, so I will save the hour and 30 minutes or however long that is.
On the other side, horror was also doing pretty good with movies like Misery that we talked about last time,
Yeah, it
maybe
was
highest
actually
grossing
the
horror movie.
the highest grossing, yeah, of 1990.
But we had like Misery, Arachnophobia, Tom Savini's take on Night of the Living Dead, but there really wasn't that much focus on the horror back then. But they've had a lot of family-friendly stuff like Home Alone, Dances with Wolves, Pretty Woman. So like the early 90s was not too concerned about scaring the hell out of us. They were pulling the family fairs out. And then with like 1991, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, Child's Play 3, which that series never got any better.
No, and I don't know if you've seen the remake of it. It wasn't terrible, but I was not hugely impressed.
I'm just not interested in that one anymore. You can only beat a horse for so long before it just falls apart. I've also noticed, like, it's like that year we had a lot of stuff like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves in 1991, Hook, T2, Judgment Day, Beauty and the Beast. But horror was kind of getting weird because you had Silence of the Lambs, which highest grossing horror movie of that year, really prestigious. But then you had like a lot of weird ones like, you know, People Under the Stairs. But then like we started getting like these family-friendly, spooky themed movies that started having like a resurgence around like the 1991, 1992, like Adam's Family, Ernest Scared Stupid, which I know you and me wore out
That's
that year.
yeah, that's my jam right there.
Oh, I could watch that every October. Like, and then you had like leading into 92, there's like they were doing Death Becomes Her, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie, which I absolutely adored at that time. Like my big sister took me to see it, so I felt like, oh, I'm getting to see something I probably shouldn't be seeing. It's like, no, 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 that was totally PG-13. Paul
And with
Rubens doing awesome things.
Buffy the movie was really good. And then Death Becomes Her. I know you mentioned that one. There is not a time that I watch that one to this day, and I've seen it I don't know how many times where I still will not laugh through that entire movie.
Oh no, it's like everybody's at peak game in that. But I don't know, it's just that was a great time for I guess stuff that you could go like your mom would take you to see in theaters that was still kind of edgy, but not really. It's like I know my parents want to take me to see Army of Darkness in 1992, but it was
Mm-mm.
definitely above Dr. Giggles, which is kind of funny because I have a friend named Hannah. Hi, Hannah. Hope you're listening. That her
Shout out
mom
Hannah.
took a group of kids, including her daughter, to see just a movie at theaters. And of course, Hannah's mom sees a movie called Dr. Giggles. And so she buys like 8 tickets for all these kids, goes in there, all of these kids aging from like, God only knows, definitely younger than 10, watching a movie that has Durant from the Darkman movies just completely gutting people. There was a lot of lives changed that day.
Future therapy there, maybe.
But even, I guess, it was easy to do because, the other big slasher of 92 from my results was Candyman. So Candyman, Dr. Giggles, it was easy to be duped when you're also going to see, Death Becomes Her and Buffy. But then again, on the opposite side of the spectrum, that same year you had like Aladdin and Home Alone 2. So just, I don't know, there's just such fantastic plethora of movies, but it really shows that the slasher was really going to hell. Speaking of which, 1993, Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, which was kind of weird because New Line acquires the rights to the Jason movies. They're like, all right, here's the premiere slasher. Let's kill him. Then you had the start of the Leprechaun movies in 1993.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But then the family-friendly, horror movies kept going. I hate to even call them horror movies because, like, they have My Boyfriend's Back. Do you remember that one?
Vaguely. I
It's like
vaguely remember that movie.
about the guy's got the crush on the girl and he dies and she's like, oh, I would have loved him if he was still alive. And he apparently heard that from 6 feet under and just jumped up like, hey, hey, hey. It's just like those like awesome, like not really horror comedies that had like the zombie theme. And then of course, Hocus Pocus, 1993 premiere. And then you had A Nightmare Before Christmas
Uh-huh.
and Double Double Toil and Trouble, which Bailey, if you're listening, I know you're probably have a bunch to say about that one.
That was a good movie. That was a good Olsen twin film.
No, I mean, I would probably say that's the best Olsen twin movie. I mean, people would probably argue with me because I know they did like the Christmas thing and go to Paris and all that, but no, it's like I could watch that. Like if my daughter went home today and my daughter's like, "Dad, watch Double Double Toil and Trouble," and it's like, "Cool, cool. I love that little.
Exactly.
He taught me life lessons." Like leading into 1994 on the horror comedy side, remember Serial Mom?
Serial Mom is a fantastic film. I love that movie. Kathleen Turner in that is
Mm.
just epic.
And for all you millennials out there, Matthew Lillard plays the son. So if you've not seen it, that's totally an awesome Matthew Lillard role to add to the criteria.
And for all of those out there listening, Ricky Lake is the daughter.
Oh, you got me. I forgot Ricky Lake was the daughter in that. But no, it's like that was just such a great John Waters movie that just it was like his version of Natural Born Killers. But it's like on the opposite side of like 1994 in the slasher genre, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. So old Wes Craven like tried to blow some, fire back into that, and I think he succeeded. He did pretty damn good in that one.
That is the first one and Wes Craven's New Nightmare are both of my favorite Freddy films in the franchise.
No, that's fair. Like if I could lead like a follow up, it'd probably be the third one where Heather Langenkamp comes back as the doctor, which I liked because it got like the first movie ended in such a way you're like, well, crap, did Nancy make it or not? And then Nancy comes back and is like, cool, cool. It's like I can take a little bit of a breath there. At the same time, that was the only real slasher of '94 that I really take note of was New Nightmare. because I think like the rest of the country was watching stuff like The Lion King, the Flintstones movie, Forrest Gump, and of course, Ace Ventura decided to blow up that year.
Braden would definitely be the one that needed to spearhead an episode about Ace Ventura.
Oh no, we could just do like an entire episode just talking about Jim Carrey.
Or
Only had like
Braden's
5
hair.
good years. Oh god. It took me
Well,
forever to try and make Braden's hair. Like Ace
Braden
Ventura.
did that hairstyle for a good while.
Well, I remember they had that one issue of the Disney Adventure or whatever it was, that little Disney magazine.
Mhm.
And it talked about how the hairstylist built up the hair with mousse and styling gel. And I was like, I can do this. Braden, meet me in the bathroom.
Cut to 3 hours later.
I just runs out of the bathroom with the hair swooped back like a gigantic pompadour and a Hawaiian shirt. Now getting back to is like 95 when we were leading in with Casper as far as the family friendly fare. And they were just trying to wring the last of the juice they could out of the slashers. Because that 1995 alone, we had Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4, The Next Generation. Terrible, horrible movie with a surprisingly good amount of like star power. Because you had Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey. And Matthew McConaughey was so over the top. It's like, I don't want to say that you can obviously tell that he was on screen, but you could obviously tell something was going on. He was enjoying life, and it wasn't just for being a psycho. You also had like Halloween 6, which sadly was the last performance of Donald Pleasance, but kind of offhandedly introduced us to Paul Rudd. So double-edged sword.
Yeah, that whole movie just felt out of place for me. And I know you said that we had Paul Rudd in that, but even Paul Rudd felt out of place to me in that.
Oh yeah, no, I was like, if you're wasting Paul Rudd, then your movie is a piece of crap. Yeah. But then you had like Candyman 2, Farewell to the Flesh, which I kind of like better than the original, but not by a whole lot. I don't know. Candyman didn't blow me away as much as I love Tony Todd. But then you
I
had
have
like
not seen Candyman 2.
it's okay. I mean, if you really wanted to see one that was based in like New Orleans, if
Okay.
people talking with a Louisiana accent, yeah, it's good. A little hometown flavor. But then like also 95, you had Leprechaun 3 and a movie that I refused to watch even when, the height of the slasher movies, The Ice Cream Man.
I was going to ask you about that because I saw that on the list and I was like, all these other ones, there are some I have not seen, but at least I've heard of them. And there was The Ice Cream Man. And I'm like, no, that was not on my radar anywhere.
Oh no, it's like it was one of those I remember seeing on the shelf at the video store, and it had Clint Howard holding like an ice cream cone with an eyeball on top instead of a cherry. And I was like, if your leading man is Clint Howard, I'm sorry, but you should have spent a little bit more money on that one. There is one movie that I had to put on the slasher side that some people might take offense to because it's too prestigious for some to be seen as a slasher, and that is Seven. I think that Seven is a slasher. I mean, you've got one individual going around nicking people. I think the only difference here is in most slasher movies, the cops are the last people to get involved. And from this one, they're there from the get-go.
I've seen that one time. So, and I don't remember when I seen it or how old I was when I seen it, but for some reason, it didn't have an impression on me, or maybe I just didn't pay attention to it the way I should have.
Well, for me, it was a little easier because my mom basically told me when I was, I guess, 12 when this came out. She's like, you are not allowed to watch Seven. Your sister has told me about this movie and I forbid you to watch it. So I was like, oh, okay, I will make sure. What was that, 7? Oh, but the number 7 in the middle. Gotcha. I will never look that up, Mom. It's kind of like when they told me, just like, don't ever watch Pulp Fiction. It made your brother-in-law sick. Don't ever try and watch it. It's like, I will never watch Pulp Fiction. All my fingers crossed. And then, like leading into 1996, like the death knell was sounding for slashers, like Hellraiser 4, Leprechaun 4, Children of the Corn 4. Every sequel that could conceivably have like a dead horse to beat was getting whooped that year. At the tail end of 1996, that's when it exploded. Because in December 6th of 1996, that's when we saw Scream. And who knew that it was going to be Wes Craven to do it again? He revitalized his Nightmare series, and he's like, well, crap, if I can do it with that, maybe I can kickstart another one. And that brilliant bearded bastard, God rest his sweet, sweet soul, is like, he just blew it up again, like with Scream. Because like we talked about last time, is like nothing had touched that before, as far as like slasher profit margin, wasn't it?
I can't remember the exact. No, it was like 173 million on Scream 1, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it was just wild because I remember even my mom, who just absolutely hated any movie that had gore and blood and teenagers saying the F word. It's like, oh, it's so uncouth, unchristianly. But I don't know. It's like all of a sudden you started having, I don't know, a little more diversity. Like, I don't know, I had to say like more realism, but at the same time, outlandishness as far as like the slashers. Because at the end of 96, like the very last month, you had Scream come out, and it just spearheaded into 97 with just this resurgence of energy for a genre that everybody had pretty much written off as dead. And within that very same year, you had Scream 2. And I mean, I was blown away. It's like they were able to pump out a sequel that quick.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, from the same, I guess, like, well, I mean, once you have like 2 hits in Hollywood, immediately just to give you all the deals, because Kevin Williamson, fresh off of Scream 2, was also working on I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Which is another okay movie.
Like I say, I mean, as far as like comparison, it wasn't too bad. I was like, oh my gosh, finally slasher movies with people that I'm close to that age, because I think, hell, I think it was 14. So I was like, I'm about to go into high school. High school's going to be awesome. It's full of sex and murder and all kinds of crazy stuff. And I'm going to survive it because I'm a movie nut.
You thought you were Jamie Kennedy.
I totally did. I was Randy, and I was ready for it. And unfortunately, my day never came.
Or fortunately.
Fortunately, yeah, probably. It's going to be one of those times like I'm going to be 45. I'm going to be taking a knife. It's like, oh no, this should have happened when I was younger. Ugh. But even like Wishmaster came out in 1997, which that was Melvin. You remember Melvin from high school?
Mm-hmm.
Like that was his big series. He loved Wishmaster 2. I remember I was like, Wishmaster, really? It's like, yeah, dude, totally awesome. So that was like his favorites was Wishmaster and Friday the 13th.
That's producer Amos's favorite movie too.
Oh,
Is
really?
Wishmaster. Yep.
But I was like, but when I was researching this, and I saw also in 1997, Hollywood was trying to push the science fiction horror on us. I guess like in the wake of Independence Day, because that year you had Alien Resurrection, Event Horizon, Mimic, and Anaconda. So they started going like giant lizard, alien horror. At the same time, mainstream was pushing Jurassic World and Men in Black, Starship Troopers. It was a really weird time. Like the big creature was starting to make a resurgence, and so was the slasher. So, but then again, also Austin Powers popped up, so everything was also very shagadelic.
Oh yeah, I always forget about Austin Powers for some reason.
Well, he didn't really blow up until '99, but we'll get into '99 here in a second because that was such a good year. It's like also with the whole sci-fi horror, like when to '98, you had The Faculty, Deep Rising, Disturbing Behavior, Phantoms, like the big monsters and the aliens were still coming.
Mm-hmm.
But slasher was still going pretty strong too, because you had your Halloween H2Os, your urban legends. Oh god, that horrible Vince Vaughn Psycho movie. I hate to say that 'cause it was an interesting concept,
I
but
think that you probably did the same thing I did, and I set it up in my mind to be as good as the original Psycho, and it did not even come close to living up to that standard.
oh no. And just the fact that it was like my mom took me and my buddy Travis Brown to see it in theaters, and so I was locked in a dark theater with my buddy and my mom, and there's Vince Vaughn holding himself. It's like obviously very excited to see Anne Heche. And it's like, this isn't awkward. This isn't awkward at all. But you also had I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, which I cringed just reading that title. I feel so bad for Miss Love Hewitt. That but we also got a very dreaded out, extremely high Jack Black. So I guess if there's like a upside to that horrible slasher atrocity, there was that.
Silver lining.
I don't know. Some people really enjoyed this movie. I'm not a big fan, but 1998 Bride of Chucky came out, which tried to blow some life back into that series, which blow is a successful term, I guess.
Hey, Jennifer Tilly was really funny in that movie.
I love Jennifer Tilly and John Ritter. All respect to the dead, but that star power could not revive that turd. At least for me. I know there's a lot of people out there that love the Chucky series that think the Bride of Chucky was its saving grace and revitalized it, but I'm off on the sidelines like, can we stop with the killer dolls?
We were never huge Child's Play fans growing up, and I never really learned to appreciate that franchise. And yeah, it has its fans out there, so I'm not knocking it, to each their own, but it never really fell into our repertoire of films that we had to watch.
No, I was like, I'll give like all kinds of credit for Brad Dourif because I love his voice acting. He was great in that character, and he kept it up for years. But at the same time, yeah, like I said, but then again, you had Phantasm 4, another series I loved in the beginning, but kind of fizzled out towards the
Hmm.
end. But all I know is like they were definitely pushing the disaster movies in '98 too, because you had Godzilla, Armageddon, and Deep Impact, all while Saving Private Ryan was marching uphill. So '98 was a pretty interesting year, but '99, I think it just was really starting to trying to figure out what the slasher was and what worked. Because, yeah, do you remember Cherry Falls?
I saw that on here, and I remember Silent Falls, but I don't remember Cherry Falls.
It was just like one of those like cash grab slashers that I actually kind of enjoyed. I can't remember who the villain ended up being, but it was just like, oh, there's a killer loose in town. Let's have a big party, and everybody, it's killing virgins, because that was like the big like switch. Like you're supposed to lose your cherry, otherwise the killer was going to get you. So the end, like the third act, was this big teenage orgy at the big house on the hill where everybody's, I don't know,
Hmm.
it was such an odd contrast to what the whole premise, the slasher motif, I guess, would be. It's like, don't smoke, don't do that. I was like, oh, the virgin always makes it. No, 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 not in this particular one.
Right.
But then you also had like the Bone Collector with Angelina Jolie, which I
Hmm.
only consider a slasher because it falls into that one person killing a bunch of people in interesting ways. But it's a wishy-washy one because you got the police already involved almost from the get-go. And it doesn't really fall into that, oh, the teenagers aren't having enough sex and smoking enough dope for it to
Yeah,
qualify. And even like was kind of hoping Braden would be on here because I wanted to bring up the Son of Sam, or the Summer of Sam rather.
which is about the son of Sam. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's about like a real killer, so it's got kind of that the town that dreaded sundown flavor. But at the same time, would you really consider David Berkowitz, a slasher? Because I don't know. I mean, that's a bit controversial. But then again, like the horror in '99 blew up because
Yeah,
everything just seemed to be spooky themed. As far as like you had The Sixth Sense blowing box office records, uh, Stir of Echoes, The Mummy with Brendan Fraser,
both good
which,
movies.
oh, that was such a good one. The Haunting, which
Good movie.
it was good. Now the House on Haunted Hill,
Great
I
movie.
loved that one. And another one that I know that you and me actually went to theaters to see was The Blair Witch Project.
I loved it in '99. I do remember walking away from the theater, and I had a migraine, but I think that was from all the camera movement. The
That was a
movie.
big thing. Like everybody's getting motion sickness from watching the camera jump around in the woods. I didn't have an issue with it, but I don't know. I was an Evil Dead fan, so just the shaky cam really didn't bother me too much. But then he has like also had like movies like Lake Placid and like the giant gator movie. But no, I was like Betty White was fantastic in Lake Placid. Idle Hands with Devon Sawa and so many great people in that movie. But like ran that horror comedy vein. But a lot of people were dying because they were smoking a lot. So maybe it was a slasher, maybe not. And you got the cannibal movie Ravenous, also '99, just wrapping up a good decade. But then I don't know. There's a lot of questionable. Is it that a slasher? And one that I actually had to like draw a question mark beside was Sleepy Hollow. I actually it's one of my favorite Tim Burton movies.
It's a good movie.
I don't talk smack about it, but it ran around that same theme. I mean, it wasn't all virgins and stoners dying, but it was like all Victorian esque. Everybody's wearing like very nice coiffed outfits, riding around in carriages. But at the same time, you got a maniac going around killing people, and he's undead. There's a little witchcraft involved. Kind of got that Jason taste about it, but it's Christopher Walken with razor fangs. Fun stuff. But would it really qualify? Because I don't know. It's like as the day, like '99 was closing out. I was like, that's cool. A lot of blood, a lot of guts, a lot of blade slanging, a lot of decapitations, which falls into a lot of slasher movies. It was weird because at the other end, like that year we had Star Wars Episode 1 blowing up. Because, I mean, anybody that lived through 99 knows everybody was slinging the lightsaber. And, you also had like American Beauty and Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, just kind of wrapping up a great decade. But oh no, it's like in the early 2000s, though, you had Scream 3. Now, in 2000, you kicked off, put a cap on pretty much that particular franchise, which I thought was a good bookend to a trilogy. You also had like Urban Legends 2. And then you had the start of like Final Destination and American Psycho, which I think kind of started recalibrating where we were going as far as a slasher. It's like maybe it's like not so much a slasher as like a psychological horror. Maybe
Yeah.
he's not a mask wielding guy. He's a good looking dude that could probably lure a couple of chicks to his, crazy decked out a condo.
Every time I think of that movie, I think of him walking down the hall with his Walkman listening to I'm Walking on Sunshine. That's what I think of every time.
But I don't know, it's like the early 2000s, though, it just, the slasher kind of fizzled out once more. And I think I can kind of blame it on two genre resurgences. And one wasn't really like a
Mhm.
resurgence, but one, the Asian ghost movies. Because right around, I guess, like, I don't know, like the time The Ring came out, like Gore Verbinski's adaptation of the Japanese horror movie. It kind of sent everybody spiraling in a different direction. Because you had like The Ring 2, The Grudge, Dark Water, like all these ghost stories
Mhm.
that had to do about like a creepy kid just being weird and jump scares. I don't know, it's like it definitely kind of shifted the scales of horror in the early 2000s. But another one was the zombie movie revival. And Lord, you want to talk about beating a dead horse? They not only beat that dead horse, they brought it back to life and fed it brains, and now they're still beating that dead horse. Because God, like we had like all those TV shows, all like oh God, it seemed like everything in the mid 2000s ended with "of the Living Dead" or "of the
Uh-huh.
Dead." Trying to steal some of George Romero's long past due thunder.
Uh-huh.
But I also think like the reason like the slasher in particular died. Do you remember all the parodies?
I was waiting for you to get to that. Yes. Yes. And all of them you had listed, I've seen all of these.
Because you had like the scary movies, of course, which just so perfectly just ribbed the knife wielding masked dude that, I mean, they had to go and hide in shame for a while, I feel. Say, what's up?
You could say that had an impact on or a cultural impact on the time because yeah, people went around saying that for more than just a couple of months.
Oh no, it's like everybody's aunt was answering the phone. What's up? It's like, you can stop that now. But I was like, and then that shriek, if you know what I did last Friday the 13th or whatever it was, that was like in that same vein. It wasn't quite as clever, I thought, but it did hit a lot of good marks.
When I first saw that on here, I thought that said Shrek. And you had the exclamation
Shrek.
mark next to it. And I was like, he's really excited about Mike Myers as an ogre.
It's like it changed the media, man. Changed everything. And you had a Psycho Beach Party with Amy Adams, which I didn't watch until a little bit later. But I don't know, I thought it was kind of a fun little spoof. It had which aunt was it? Like, was it Zelda or Hilda? Like playing that one like matriarch character.
It wasn't Carolyn Ray, was it? I
I
think it
believe it was
was.
Carolyn Ray.
Okay, so then
Carolyn Ray. Sorry.
no, you're fine. Yeah, so then it would be Beth Broderick.
But I don't know. It's like it was kind of weird how everything just kind of like swapped around like after that one, because like you said, like the slasher died because it was just being made fun of too harshly.
Yeah.
But was there any 21st century slashers that you can think of that just kind of appealed to you?
You haven't seen this series. Braden has, which is The Terrifier.
See, I've heard a lot of people really like that, but I don't know. Like, I asked them, it's like, what's its major pull? And they're just like, oh, it's got a lot of blood and guts and stuff. And it's like, that's not my draw.
The second one is better than the first one. The first one, to me, I don't really care for the slasher horror films where there's no point to the story, where there's no. I have to have a reason or some sort of, I guess, method to their madness. And in Terrifier 1, it does not have that at all. And then in Terrifier 2, at least they make an attempt to do a storyline, and they make their final girl much stronger. The second one, like I said, they actually make an effort to give you a chance to know the final girl character before they even bring They actually give you a chance to get to know the characters before they start killing them off, and they don't do that in the first one.
See, I think there's a few different like horror movies in just the last, I guess, couple of decades now that we're in 2024 that I don't know, I enjoyed them. But as far as slashers, I guess it really is just those revival. Is like I enjoyed the first one, but I didn't want to watch the second one. I still haven't seen them. I probably will eventually, but right now I'm just kind of enjoying. It's like, ah, yes, let's leave Michael Myers a toasted marshmallow in the basement because I don't know, it seemed like a nice bookend. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I can see it. They gotta milk it for a few more dollars.
I will
I,
not ruin anything for you for that, but I'm going to say if you do watch the second one, even and I know you will too, you're going to watch it and you're going to say, not even Michael Myers could do what Michael Myers just did to get out of that situation. That's all I'll say. You'll still watch the movie probably. But yeah, that first opening scene of the second film, I was like, that's okay. That's setting him up to be superhuman.
well, I mean, after watching the fifth movie, where you watch like at the end of the fourth one, he takes like 100 shots to the chest, legs, head, everything, falls down the hole. They drop dynamite on top of him. It's like, oh, he's done. Fifth movie opens up with him crawling away, going down like a little convert until he finds like a homeless guy that nurses him back
Some
to health.
hobbit, yeah, who nurses him back to health. Yeah, that
It's
was an
like
odd story arc, but yes,
it's
yes.
like even if you're willing to follow that down the rabbit hole, then okay, yeah, suspension of disbelief accepted.
I watched every single one of them, and uh, I respect that they're in the franchise.
I had to stop making fun of the Rob Zombie ones because apparently its fan base is growing really hard, and I'm like, really, even that second one? But then again, like the
Uh,
first Halloween is it's personal. It could easily be in my top 10 movies of all time.
yeah, and
Like
I
I
don't
love
really.
John Carpenter. What is your earliest slasher memory? Because I can't necessarily pinhole down like what the first bit I was, but I remember watching up at Mama Mary's, like at one of our sleepovers, that
Mhm.
they were watching like the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
Oh yeah,
And
but we weren't
I
supposed to be in the living room watching that.
oh no, but we
We,
were strategically like running through and playing, like, oh look at us, we're playing, we're not watching this slasher film at all. Okay, we're running
I
again.
remember that. Yeah, I had a vague recollection of that. That one I remember, and then I remember being at my mom's one time, and I couldn't tell you what she was watching, but it was like it was in a castle, and it had to be a vampire movie or something. But there were these little demon-like creatures that were running to this woman's room, and like one was biting her on the neck. So again, I couldn't tell you what movie it was, but it was very 80s, and probably not something that's even still talked about to this day. But yeah, I remember watching that, and then I remember I couldn't sleep for the entire night.
Isn't it weird? Like I don't remember like details about watching, like Child's Play or Nightmare on Elm Street, like or not a full like stretch of it. But Lord, it keep you up at night. Like just the idea of Freddy Krueger running around in your head, like it's
The
like ah,
first one that I can remember us sitting and watching, or even myself, and we just talked about it in length, but it was Halloween, and that was the Halloween, probably 96, 97, and Jennifer. She's the one who had told us about Halloween. She had hyped us up and it was coming on TV. So your mom was like, okay, I'm going to let you watch it because it's on network television and it's not a videotape. You can watch it. And then so I begged Jennifer to basically beg my mama to let me watch it. And she was like, okay. And she did. I
oh
was
yeah, it
able
was
to
like my
watch it
mom's
with
big
you.
thing. It's like my mom had the issue of the language and the nudity. Like they could smoke all the weed in the world, they could be shooting, but it's like, look, I don't want them saying F word. I don't want them saying. But since it was a TV edit, I remember Jen was able to sneak that one under the wire, and we're like, this is horrifying. Every year we would go trick or treating on Third Avenue here in Lenore City,
Hmm.
and every house looked like the Myers house, and if not every house, every other house. And we would
Well,
just
that's
say that. It's like,
true.
look, that one's got a red door, just like now. That one's got a balcony, just like the Myers house. That one's got.
Yeah, all the houses across the street, it was like that could be in Halloween. That could be in that looks like the sidewalk scene in Halloween.
Oh
Yeah.
no, it was just like that perfect Haddonfield like neighborhood. And I think that's why we went there to trick or treat every year because this looks like a slasher flick. But no, I was like, see, I had like one more thing here. Perhaps not. I remember had like some specific Braden questions. I was like, Braden, sci-fi horror or slasher?
I'm hoping that Braden will be returning soon. Bailey and I did not record the Halloween Town episode because she was running about 30 minutes late or so. And then so I just sent her a message and I said, do you want to record it right now or do you want to wait until we have Braden? And she's like, I would rather wait till we have Braden. And I was like, okay, apparently Braden's the glue. All right.
No, like it's true though. There's like Braden just can throw in a lot of flavor, especially with the trivia side of things. So I can understand that.
Braden would have been a couple of years later experiencing the things we had already seen. So that might be why he has a different perspective on it than we do.
Had to watch a lot of these in the rearview mirror, like after we'd burn them out.
Yeah, he told me that he did not watch Scream until 2003. So I was graduating high school. You were already 1 year out of high school by then. Well, if you guys have enjoyed this episode of The Braden Show without Braden,
There's no Chico and Harpo back here.
we tried to carry the show. We did better.
Hey, we did
This
pretty
is the-
good. I hope it's
this
not
is
a bunch of dead air. So
It's not you. It's me sitting here because I didn't know what to say about some of the stuff. Because some of those movies I had not even seen. I'm not the horror aficionado I thought I was.
no,
The
like once you get
silent
on
parts
Google and you
are-
see like all the movies that came out in the 90s, you're like, damn, I did not see a lot of these. But then you look at the titles, like, probably because they look crappy. Can we get our money back?
Okay, nostalgians, if you've enjoyed this episode, slicing through time, the 90s slasher renaissance, and you feel like we did not touch on a topic that you feel should have been mentioned in this episode, you should reach out to us because we want to hear from you. And our email address is the 90s rewind report at gmail.com. We are going to have guest Connie Kelly on next week. She's going to talk about her Hocus Pocus decorations, a few of her other film decorations she's come up with. And we're going to have those pictures available for you guys. If you're not watching this on YouTube and you're listening, the photos will be on our TikTok and our Instagram. That's at the 90s Rewind Report. And then X, formerly known as Twitter, we are simply at 90s Rewind Report because even though Elon Musk can make an electric vehicle, he cannot allow us to do more than 16 characters for our usernames. So you guys reach out to us. Make sure you watch Connie's episode and look out for those pictures. And Nate, would you like to end our podcast?
So which was your favorite scary movie? Let us know in the comments. And hey, you won't even need a voice changer. Catch you next time on the 90s Rewind Report. Unless we catch you first. Slash you later.